The razor was a Gillette Fusion Pro Blade. Silver handle, one replacement cartridge still in the packaging sitting next to it on the shelf. Not mine. I don't use Gillette. I've used the same Harry's razor for 4 years, it's on the other side of the shower on a magnetic strip I mounted myself. I stood in my own shower in my work clothes, still in my dress shirt, still had my laptop bag over my shoulder. I'd come straight upstairs from the garage and I looked at that razor for probably 30 seconds. Then I took out my phone and I took a photograph of it. Then I went back downstairs, put my laptop bag on the kitchen table, and sat down. My wife wasn't home. Her car was in the garage, but she wasn't home. The house was empty and quiet and smelled like someone had recently cooked something, and I sat at that kitchen table for a long time thinking about what kind of man I wanted to be about this. But let me start from the beginning. My name is Greg. I'm 46 years old. I've worked in regional sales for a medical supply company based out of Columbus, Ohio for 14 years. I manage a territory that covers western Pennsylvania, eastern Ohio, and the northern tip of West Virginia, hospitals, clinics, surgical centers, a few large private practices. I travel 3 to 4 days most weeks. Pittsburgh on Mondays sometimes, down to Wheeling on Wednesdays, back through Youngstown on Thursdays. I know the Holiday Inn Express on Route 19 in Bridgeville like I know my own kitchen. I know which Cracker Barrel has the fastest service off I-70. I have logged more miles on rental cars than most people drive in a lifetime. This is relevant because my schedule, predictable in its unpredictability, regular in its irregularity, is what made everything possible. I was gone enough that there were gaps. She filled the gaps. My wife is Patrice. 43 years old. We met at a work event in Columbus in 2011. She was doing marketing consulting for a company that shared office space with my employer at the time. We dated a year and a half, got married in 2013 at a venue outside Dublin, Ohio, about 100 guests, outdoor reception, late June. The weather was perfect in the way that Ohio weather almost never is in late June. We have one daughter, Avery, who is 12 and is currently very interested in competitive gymnastics and even more interested in a boy at her school named Tyler, which I know because she told her mother and her mother told me, which is the kind of small marital exchange that feels very ordinary until suddenly it doesn't. Patrice worked freelance, marketing strategy, brand consulting, a roster of maybe 8 to 10 clients at a time. She worked from home mostly, the occasional client meeting in the city, sometimes a day trip to Cleveland or Cincinnati. No fixed office, no fixed hours, no one tracking her schedule but herself. I understood this later as a significant structural element of what she'd been able to do. When nobody's checking your calendar can say anything. The trip to Pittsburgh where all of this started was supposed to be 2 nights, Tuesday and Wednesday. I had a Tuesday morning meeting at a hospital in Squirrel Hill and a Wednesday afternoon presentation at a surgical center in the North Hills. Standard trip. I'd done it 100 times. Tuesday went fine. Wednesday morning I woke up at 6 in the hotel and checked my email and found a message from my Wednesday contacts saying the surgical center had a water main issue, building was closed, could we reschedule for the following week? I said yes, checked out of the hotel by 8, was on I-76 westbound by 8:30. I was home by noon. I texted Patrice from the road, coming home early, water issue at the site. She replied, oh nice. I'm out running errands, be back around 2. I said, no rush, I'll probably just decompress. She sent a thumbs up emoji. That was the last text before I pulled into the garage. I went upstairs to change out of my work clothes. I walked into our bathroom. And there was the razor. I want to describe precisely what happened in my brain in the 30 seconds I stood there looking at it because I think it matters. It wasn't a movie moment. There was no dramatic swell of emotion. It was more like the feeling of stepping on a stair that isn't there, that half second of wrongness before your body catches up. I thought, that's not mine. I thought, I haven't had a guest stay here. I thought, Avery's at school. I thought, Patrice said she's out running errands. I thought, she knew I wasn't coming home until tomorrow. And then all of those thoughts lined up in a row and produced a single conclusion that I didn't let myself say out loud yet. I photographed the razor. I went downstairs. I sat at the kitchen table. Here is the decision I made in the next 20 minutes and why I made it. I am 46 years old and I have spent 14 years in sales, which is essentially a job of reading people and situations accurately and not acting on incomplete information. You do not walk into a negotiation without knowing your position. You do not make claims you cannot support. I had a razor in my shower and an empty house and a wife who knew I wasn't supposed to be home. That was what I had. It was suggestive. It was not enough. I needed enough. I put the razor back exactly where it was. I went back downstairs. I took my laptop bag to the kitchen table and I opened my laptop and I worked for 2 hours until Patrice came home at 1:50. She came in through the garage, said she was surprised to see my car, gave me a hug, asked how the drive was. I said fine. Long. She started putting away groceries. I watched her and I thought, she's good at this. And then I thought, I need to be better. That evening after Patrice had gone to bed I sat in the kitchen and I did 3 things. First, I ordered a GPS tracker. The bouncy vehicle tracker, $67, monthly subscription $8, real-time updates every 30 seconds, I'd seen it recommended in a forum I'd found after an hour of searching. Compact, magnetic, weatherproof. I ordered it for next-day delivery to my office address, not the house. Second, I pulled up our credit card statements. We had 3 cards, 2 joint, one that was technically mine that Patrice was an authorized user on. I went back 12 months. I was looking for hotel charges, restaurant charges on days I was out of town, anything that didn't fit. What I found was not dramatic. Small cash withdrawals, $60 here, $80 there, on days I was traveling. A restaurant charge on a Tuesday in September at a place in Westerville I'd never heard of, $94, which was more than Patrice would typically spend on lunch alone. A charge at a Target in Gahanna on a Wednesday I'd been in Pittsburgh, unremarkable on its own, but Gahanna was in the opposite direction from the Target she usually went to, which was 5 minutes from the house. Small things. Individually meaningless. Collectively suggestive. Third thing, I looked at the razor again. I'd left it where it was. I photographed it again from a slightly different angle and confirmed the brand and model in the photo. Gillette Fusion Pro Glide. I googled the retail price, $13.99 at CVS. I thought about a man who leaves his razor in someone else's shower. A man comfortable enough to leave his razor. That's not a first visit. That's not a second visit. That's a man who has been here enough times to start treating this bathroom like one he has access to. The bouncy tracker arrived at my office the next morning. I activated it from my phone in the office parking lot, drove home at lunch on the pretense of grabbing some files, and placed it in the undercarriage of Patrice's Toyota Highlander on the rear frame rail, held by the magnet. Took less than a minute. I drove back to the office. That evening the app showed me exactly where the Highlander had been all day. A grocery run in the morning, consistent with the errands she'd mentioned. An hour parked at an address in Westerville I didn't recognize at midday. Then back home. I mapped the Westerville address. It was a residential street. A house. I wrote down the address. I did not go to the house. Not yet. I called Douglas Reeves, a family law attorney in Columbus, recommended by a colleague who'd been through a rough divorce 2 years earlier. I got Douglas on the phone that same evening. I told him what I had to the razor, the credit card anomalies, the GPS tracker, the Westerville address. He told me Ohio is a no-fault divorce state, meaning documented adultery doesn't directly affect property division in most cases. However, he said, if I could show that marital funds had been spent on the affair, hotels, restaurants, gifts, that could factor in as dissipation of marital assets. He told me to keep building documentation. He recommended a PI. The PI Douglas recommended was a man named Stan Kowalski, not making that up. That's his actual name, operated out of a small firm in Worthington, former Franklin County Sheriff's deputy, 18 years. I met Stan at a Panera in Worthington on a Friday morning. He was 54, stocky, quiet, the kind of man who seems to take up less space than he actually does, which I assume is professionally useful. I gave him everything. The tracker logs, the credit card statements, the Westerville address, the razor photographs. He looked through it all without expression. He said, "Give me 3 weeks." Stan came back to me after the first week with a name. The Westerville address belonged to a man named Kevin Marsh. 48 years old. Divorced 2 years prior. Worked as a project manager for a commercial construction company based in Dublin. Drove a silver Ford F-150. No criminal record. No outstanding legal issues. The kind of man who is entirely unremarkable until he isn't. Stan had also confirmed via surveillance that Patrice's Highlander had been at Kevin Marsh's house on 2 separate occasions that first week, once on a Tuesday afternoon for approximately 3 hours, once on a Thursday morning for about 90 minutes. He had photographs of the Highlander in the driveway. He had one photograph of Patrice entering the front door. He did not yet have a photograph of both of them together outside. He got that in week 2. Tuesday afternoon, Patrice's Highlander in the driveway, Stan positioned down the street. At 1:40 p.m. Kevin Marsh came out the front door to get something from his truck and Patrice came out with him. She had her jacket in her hand like she'd just picked it up. They stood at the truck for a moment talking. He touched her face. Stan had 4 frames of that sequence. Both faces visible. His truck in the frame. The house number visible on the door behind them. I looked at those 4 photographs on a Thursday evening sitting in a hotel room in Pittsburgh. I was on the road, legitimate this time, and I thought about the 14 years. I thought about the wedding in Dublin, Ohio in the perfect June weather. I thought about Avery telling her mother about Tyler from school and her mother telling me. I thought about the razor on the shower shelf. I let myself feel what I felt for about 20 minutes. Then I called Douglas Reeves and told him we were ready to move. Douglas filed the divorce petition on a Monday in the 5th week. Patrice was served at the house on a Wednesday afternoon. I was at a client meeting in Youngstown. My phone lit up at 2:17 p.m. with her name and I watched it ring and go to voicemail and I finished my meeting. I listened to the voicemail in my rental car in the parking lot. She said my name once. She said she was sorry. She said she wanted to talk. She said she was sorry again. The message was 58 seconds long and sorry was the only word that appeared more than once. I called Douglas. He called her attorney. The financial picture took about 6 weeks to fully establish. Ohio no fault, so the adultery itself didn't move the needle directly. But Douglas's forensic review of our finances found $4,200 in cash withdrawals over 14 months that couldn't be traced to any household expense amounts consistent with cash payments for meals, activities, things that don't leave a digital record. He also found a charge on Patrice's individual credit card, a card I hadn't known about, opened in her name only, that appeared in discovery, totaling $1,850 at a resort in the Hocking Hills area of Ohio on a weekend in October when she told me she was at a marketing conference in Cincinnati. The resort booking was for 2 people. Douglas argued these as dissipation of marital assets. Patrice's attorney disputed the framing. The mediator was persuaded by the documentation. The house was the main asset. We'd bought it in 2015 for $310,000, paid it down steadily, and it appraised in July at $447,000. After the remaining mortgage, the equity was $198,000. The mediation settlement gave me $118,000 of that equity to Patrice's $80,000, adjusted for the documented dissipation finding. Not a dramatic difference in dollar terms. But it was the principle of the thing, Douglas said. The record reflects what happened. That matters. Avery lives primarily with me. This was her choice, expressed clearly to the custody evaluator, and it was not contested. She is with Patrice every other weekend and alternating holidays. Avery has not asked me many questions about why this happened. She is 12 and she is smart, and I think she understands more than she lets on. What she has asked me is whether I'm okay. She asked me that the first week after I told her, sitting at the same kitchen table where I'd sat the day I came home early and found the razor. I told her yes. She looked at me for a moment the way kids look at you when they're deciding whether to believe you, and then she nodded and went back to her homework. She believed me because I was telling the truth. I was going to be okay. I moved into a townhouse in Powell, Ohio, good school district. Avery didn't have to change schools. 2-car garage, small yard, quiet street. I mounted a Harry's Razor magnetic strip in the master bathroom shower on the first weekend I moved in. Mine on the left. Nothing on the right. Clean and specific and exactly as it should be. Kevin Marsh, as far as I know, is still in that house in Westerville. Whether Patrice is still involved with him is not something I track or need to know. The GPS tracker came off her Highlander the day Douglas filed. That chapter is closed and I don't open closed chapters. I'm still on the road 3 to 4 days a week. Same territory, same Holiday Inn Express on Route 19 in Bridgeville, same Cracker Barrel off I-70. The work is the same. I'm good at the work. I've always been good at the work, and that hasn't changed because my marriage ended. If anything, I'm sharper now. Less distracted. More present in the room when I'm in the room. There's a rest stop on I-76 eastbound just past the Portage County line that has a decent view of the Cuyahoga Valley on a clear morning. I stop there sometimes when I'm heading to Pittsburgh. Get out, stretch, drink the last of my coffee. It's not a dramatic view. Just hills and tree lines and the suggestion of a river. But in the early morning with the road mostly empty, it's genuinely good. I stand there and I think about nothing in particular. And then I get back in the car and I drive.